1845.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. The Alzheimer's Association provides care, support, and research to help you take control of the situation with your family and manage the disease together. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together. Visit alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
I am a non-attorney spokesperson representing a team of lawyers who help people that have been injured or wronged. If you've been involved in a serious car, truck, or motorcycle accident or injured at work, you have rights, and you may be entitled to money for your suffering. Don't accept an offer you get from an insurance company until you talk to a lawyer. And we represent some of the best personal injury lawyers you can find. Tough lawyers that will fight to win your case. And they're so good they stake their reputation on it by only getting paid if you win. So if you've been in a serious car, truck, or motorcycle accident or hurt on the job, find out today for free what kind of compensation you may be entitled to. Call the legal helpline right now.
800-257-3148. 800-257-3148. 800-257-3148. That's 800-257-3148.
When disaster strikes, flood or fire, every second counts. At Emergency Construction Group, they specialize in immediate response and same-day service for any residential, commercial, or industrial emergency across the Chicagoland area. With over 30 years of experience, they've got the expertise, manpower, and equipment to handle any size loss fast. They follow strict IICRC guidelines to restore your property the right way, the first time. Their team values transparency, constant communication, and strong ethical standards because your peace of mind matters. Licensed, bonded, and insured, they're here for you 24/7, 365 days a year. Call 855-4ECG now. That's 855-432-4669. Or visit their website at emergencyconstructiongroup.com and let Emergency Construction Group put your life back together one step at a time. That's Emergency Construction Group. Your satisfaction is their passion.
And welcome back to the show. This is The Truth About Chicago Sports here on WRMN 1410 AM. Let's keep it rolling, my friends. That was awesome being able to sit back and talk with the accredited journalist, Robert Little. I always love him, man. It's always great to hear his insight. And it was just nice to kind of really hear his thoughts on that Micah Parsons, because I know I've heard a lot of pundits screaming about him coming to the Bears, and I don't agree with it. And I'm glad that he was able to put some great light on that. As we referenced earlier when we first started the show, the Bears won last night against the Chiefs 29-27, a thrilling comeback victory. The game in the same week on Sunday, they beat the Buffalo Bills 38-0. We'll start with the Buffalo Bills, Kyle. The starters played a little bit. And they looked good. That first series opening drive, they came out, they drove the ball down. It was solid. It was proper. Now, the Bills didn't play their starters. It didn't look, definitely on the offensive side of the ball, they didn't. And the defensive side of the ball looked solid. I mean, like I said, they shut them out. It was like, wow, this team has really got some good depth. I mean, I never put a lot into preseason, but it was nice to see that this team just came out with fire. Now, the game against the Chiefs, completely different story. It looked bad at first.
Yes, it did.
Now, not like, oh God, like the Bears, like they ramsacked them and the Bears couldn't come back. As we saw, they came back and won the game. But at the same time, it was like starters against starters. It didn't look good. Mahomes was driving all on the Bears, making wild, crazy plays, doing what Mahomes does. The defense couldn't get him down.
And his team let him down on those drives.
Couple drops,
Yeah.
couple things where it was surefire touchdown. He burned us.
Yep.
And his team, like you say, let him down.
Yeah.
So it actually helped us in some way, but it still led to halftime. We went into halftime. I want to say it was getting ready to head into halftime. It was 3 to I think it was 3-20 at that point. And everybody thought that Caleb was coming to the game. I mean, even ESPN's NFL reporter for the Bears, Courtney Cronin, had reported that Caleb was coming out, and I thought so too. I thought Caleb was coming out after that last series because it just didn't look good. They couldn't get the ball moving. I think then they got the 3 points after they should have probably got a touchdown on that drive, and then he came back out again. And you know what? Kudos to the coach to say, you know what, you need a little bit, you need another one.
Mm-hmm.
And
now, was that Ben Johnson or was that him saying, I want one more?
I wonder. That's a give and take because a lot of times in the preseason it is on the player. Like, what do you want? You want another one rep, or are you done for the night? A lot of times it does turn that way for the especially for the starting quarterback.
Yeah.
And either way it goes, the decision was made for him to get that one more rep, and I'm really glad that happened. What we saw in that last drive was what I was hoping to see in the first couple opening drives that didn't happen. It was a lot of mistakes, sacks given up, guys, missing assignments, Caleb holding the ball too long. It was a lot of a mixed bag of bad things that happened on the offensive side of the ball. And then on top of the defense wasn't making stops. Like I said, Mahomes making plays. They're scoring on the Bears. It's like, oh, man, this is getting out of hand. And then Caleb comes down and leads a sensational drive, capped off with a beautiful touchdown to Rome. It was actually the last 3 plays went to Rome Doomsday. The first one was a back shoulder catch against 2 defenders, which I know hey, asking a wide receiver to catch against 2 defenders is not an easy task, but there's a reason that they're in the NFL because they've proven that they can do that. And he had his hand on that bad boy. Yeah. I felt like Rome should have made that catch. But here was the thing that impressed me the most about that situation. It didn't fluster Rome whatsoever. And nor did it break Caleb's confidence in Rome. He came right back to him with a sensational throw. Rome makes a beautiful cut, comes back to the inside, gets them down within the 5. I think it was like the 5.
Yeah, they got down to like the 3,
Yeah. And then he's able to come back and find him to cap it off with the touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. That's the type of football that I'm expecting to see during the season.
Yep.
I don't want to see what I saw in those first couple series. A lot of short underneath pass. I think it was a one play they went 4th and 7, and then they threw to Colston Loveland on a 5 and out route, and it was short of the. And I'm like, well, what the heck was the point of that? You know what I mean? Like, if you're not going to run for the first down marker, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
So. I was getting antsy.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, so was
I was getting antsy, and I knew I'm like it's preseason. That's all I kept telling myself.
Well, the one thing I thought about, especially that opening drive that Kansas City had, the corners that were out there were not fast enough to keep up with those wide receivers.
No,
the defensive line was getting around, was making some pressure.
Yeah.
But those corners could not keep up.
None.
And that went through the whole game. I mean, those corners, we have some bigger guys on corners, which is nice, but they did not have the speed to keep up.
Guys were making play after play against them.
Yeah. And so, that was one thing that I saw right off the bat. I'm like, all right, if Mahomes stays in this game any longer, he would have scored more and more and more. But his own players dropping those balls, that's a continuation from the Super Bowl to now.
If you think about
these
that,
guys are still dropping passes.
Yep.
And
touchdown passes, no less.
And then with Caleb, looking at his first drive, that was his first. Like, the Bills were a second string that he was going against.
Exactly.
This was his first actual experience going against a number 1 defense with the new offense.
One's against one.
Yeah. So I feel like that was a little bit of a wake up call, to So we're like, oh, whoa, okay, we're not really where we're at right now. But it slowly started to turn the corner. But I got to say that second unit with Badgett, I feel like they have a harder, tighter run ship that they just look way.
They were fluent. They were fluent.
You know,
And like I said, these are 2s against 2s and some 3s against 3s because this was the last preseason game. So, like how would they flow against 1s? Could be a completely different story. But the bottom line,
it looks like two different teams almost.
And I'm gonna, the reason why I believe that is, first off, because the Bears' depth is better than Kansas City. Kansas City may have some better starters. Their quarterback is in the Hall of Famer, and they're proven, but their depth. I think the Bears have better depth, and I mean the Bears definitely have a better backup quarterback. I guarantee you, I guarantee Kansas City would kill to have Badgett on their team
over Gardner Minshew,
backing up Mahomes.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes, and so when you throw in a guy like a Tyson Badgett, who I believe is a high level talent for a backup quarterback. He came from obscurity, sure. But there was a reason that he was drafted. There was something that was saw in him. You don't get drafted as a fluke. Or, I'm sorry, he actually didn't get drafted. He got brought to the roster.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get brought to rosters by flukes. Like somebody saw something in you. Otherwise, me and you would have got invited to an NFL roster. Like, hey, come on over here, Marcus. Why not? You're young. You're big. You're tall. No. Somebody's got to see something. So they saw something in him and brought him in. Now, what he's done with that opportunity, that's where the testament goes to a player. Mm-hmm. He has worked his butt off to make himself better year after year. Maybe the only real flaw against Badgett is he doesn't have a rocket arm.
Yeah,
that's really but in terms of his touch, his ball placement, his management of the game, of the system, he's got it down.
Oh yeah, his touchdowns, especially in this preseason, have been in tight windows and just spot on.
That last touchdown throw.
Oh, yeah.
I'm telling you that. I mean, literally, I'm staring at the TV. My brother-in-law goes, hey, man, there's 7 seconds left. And I go, what? The Bears got – my exact words, the Bears are still playing? Because I thought Kansas City had ran it out. And then the Bears get the turnover. Now, Badgett is driving down. And I'm like, okay, what you going to do with this kid? And he does exactly what a bad boy is supposed to do. Yep. Stick it to the team. And I mean, that wasn't no easy throw.
No, it wasn't.
He put it right in there, right on Walker's back shoulder. Oh, tremendous touch.
Yep.
Right at the side of the end zone where no one else can make a play except for Walker.
And actually, he had another one like that to Alexander.
Yes.
In the drive before that, he had another one where it was a back shoulder and he was able to cut up the field. He makes those passes. And I don't want to compare because it's, 2s against 2s and 1s against 1s. But that when you look at the way that second unit comes in the second half of the preseason, it's like a completely different ran ship to where they seem more in sync.
They've got it down. They got it. It's a better understanding. And also, you got to remember, Badgett is a year ahead of Caleb. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, him understanding defenses, him understanding situations, he's gonna be better at that. It's just a fact. I mean, I'm sorry, you've been in the NFL longer. You're gonna have a better grasp of those things. And so, like, if Caleb was playing against these 2s, would he have had the same situation? I think so.
Oh yeah.
I think it'd have been the same situation where he'd have lit them up as well. It's just a testament to how good I think Tyson Badgett really is and why he was re-signed for the Bears. The funny part about it, he's the first quarterback that's been re-signed for the Bears since Jay Cutler.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy. When you say that out loud, you're like, wait a minute, what? But yes. Now, mind you, that it's not all because of horrible quarterback play. Mitch Trubisky didn't work. They just thought that they could go a better direction with Justin. It wasn't that Justin was horrible. I think that they could have won games with Justin, but they felt that they had an upgraded quarterback with Caleb, and I believe that they did. And
I do too.
And it was the right move. It was a hard move, but it was the right move. And so it's not like, what led the Bears here was just complete apathy at quarterback. But at the same time, that still is like, dang, man, we haven't re-signed a quarterback since Jay. And even when they re-signed Jay, I was kind of like, should we? You know what I mean? I was on the fence when we re-signed him.
Yeah.
I was like, you guys sure? Yeah, he sat out in that championship game on the bike. Hard for me to let that go, But yeah, they did. They made that decision. And now here we are, fast forwarding to 2025. They have re-signed a quarterback again. And Tyson deserves it. And I'm glad that they were smart enough to see that and keep him in their wheelhouse.
Oh, yeah.
So that they can dictate the terms.
Yeah.
Because you best believe at one point or another, if this kid continues to play like this, some teams coming to knock him.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And you know what? As much as I love the kid, if Caleb becomes who Caleb becomes, the kid won't play much.
No.
And if we can get capital for him, because quarterbacks are premium in this league, if we could get capital for an undrafted free agent, that's one of the biggest flex that Brian Poles could ever have.
Yeah, or do you hold on to that chip?
As long as you can.
Just in case
As
you don't
long
know
as
what
you
could
can.
happen.
I mean, literally, as long as you hold on to that chip until someone makes you an offer you can't refuse.
Yeah.
Like it's got to be the Godfather. Let me make you an offer you can't refuse. That's the only way you don't, because you got that chip. That chip is in your wheelhouse. That chip is in love with your organization. He appreciates how you brought him up. Yes, he has aspirations of being a starter, but he accepts his role with humility and grace, and he embraces it. Yeah, the Bears are holding on to that chip as long as they possibly can.
And if anything, this shows, Caleb, like, hey, man, we got this guy here who's hungry, who wants to do it, who's taking the system, who's doing all these things,
We got this dude right here. We just re-signed him. I'm just saying.
And that should be even more motivation for Caleb to be like, all right, I really got to come out here and shine and just.
Well, not
do
enough
what I need
motivation to
do.
get the bag.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to get a way bigger bag than Tyson.
Yep.
That's got to be a motivation. The Bears have already shown they'll pay you.
Mm-hmm.
We'll pay you if you come out. So he already knows right now, if I ball, I'm getting paid.
Yeah.
Ain't going to be no situation where we're going to play no games. You're going to come in, get your contract, continue to ball, And I mean, man, look, and if this team becomes a playoffs, if this team becomes a playoff, God forbid he leads us to a Super Bowl.
Oh, I know.
All I can say is that, man, get ready, McCaskies, because this ain't gonna be cheap. I mean, the starting quarterbacks are going for $50 million right now, something like that.
Yeah.
By the time it's up for him, he might almost be $70 million, man.
Oh, yeah, I could see it. Yeah. There was one other guy from actually the past 2 games that I wanted to talk to you about because I brought him up when we were talking about free agency, and that was Olamide Zacchaeus.
What a signing that has turned into.
And I told you, I'm like, coming in as that slot and filling up that yak and everything else. I'm like, that's going to be something that they need to look at. And then I was looking at another thing, and it was just kind of something I was thinking about once they drafted Luther Burden and then the blocks that he was throwing in Buffalo.
Ooh.
And they were talking about how Amon-Ra learned how to become a blocker under Ben Johnson. And now you see Luther starting to get into that role of being the blocker. The only thing that he needs to do is mature a little bit more.
That's it.
Because that penalty that he got yesterday was the same kind of penalty that he always got in Missouri. But I feel like that wide receiver room is turning into a way where I think they're going to have the ability or the notion or the rumor mill might coming around of moving DJ Moore.
I don't think DJ will see another contract.
Well, no, but
that DJ will play this contract out. He won't see another contract again. Not from the Bears.
Yeah.
Because there will be no reason to. We're seeing the ascension of Rome. Literally, we're witnessing the ascension of Rome. Luther Burden looks like he's going to be the real deal.
Mm-hmm.
Zacchaeus has come right in and he's fit in perfectly, way more than I envisioned. Like, I mean, really, he's and they said he had the best camp of anybody. They said this dude came in focused and ready.
Yeah.
So now you've already got 3 wide receivers, right? You think about it, you've already got 3 right there. Tyler Scott is starting to emerge. He's been making plays. He was a guy that was drafted by the Bears. The Bears have 5 legit wide receivers on this roster, in my opinion, and that's beautiful because that's something we haven't had for some time.
No.
We've got 5 guys on this roster, guys that can be dangerous, guys that can really make plays and hurt you in that wide receiver room. But you're 100% correct. It'll only be a matter of time before DJ is either traded or not just re-signed.
And that's one thing I don't get is you could see the connection between Caleb and Rome and Caleb and Olamide, but you don't see
it was the way it happened. Remember when he was traded and brought to this team, Justin was there and they immediately built a bond. He had one of his best NFL seasons under him, and then you remove this guy who become his friend, who become like one of his best friends.
Yep.
And you remove this guy and tell him, and you tell this wide receiver, hey, we're bringing in a rookie quarterback. Don't worry, it's going to be okay. He's even better than the guy we had before. And all of a sudden there's struggles, and they're not on the same page all the time. It's not always happened. Yeah, he seems to have a much more better connection with Rome. It's a better, so it's not a blinding thing. You could see even in the game down the stretch there was a reason that Rome was still in the game and no DJ Moore, because that's who he trusts.
Yep.
I don't even think DJ was playing on that last series. I think DJ had already took the pads off.
Yeah, I didn't see him.
I don't remember seeing him on the field whatsoever, and so that tells me a lot right there. As much as right now, DJ is still the stud. He is still the alpha receiver. He's still receiver number 1 right now, and he's paid so as well, accordingly as well. There will come a certain point where I do, just like you say, by reading how the connections are going, seeing how the flow has happened, unless there's a change with the season, it will come a matter of time where Rome will usurp DJ Moore as wide receiver number 1, and that's okay, because I think that's why they drafted him, honestly.
Oh yeah.
I mean, as much as I'm not trying to start no drama. I'm just being this is the truth about Chicago sports, and you don't draft a dude that high in the draft unless your plans is for him to be wide receiver number 1 day.
Yeah, when you draft your quarterback and your wide receiver in the
same draft,
in the same round,
you're literally putting them together. Like, here you go.
Yep.
Here you go, Montana and Rice. You guys are together now for as long as your career and we can have success. That's your QB1. Yep. I mean, that's your wide receiver 1.
Yep.
And DJ has the pedigree and all that, but the real connection, everybody can see it. It's so obvious. It's the connection between Rome and Caleb. You saw it even last year.
Yep.
When things broke down, when Caleb really looked for someone, the ball went to Rome.
Yeah, it was either going to him or Keenan Allen, because there was that whole stretch where he depended on Keenan Allen the whole time, and that's where Zacchaeus comes in that role to be that safety blanket, and then now you just need to get Luther Burden.
Get him in the mix.
Get his head in the right spot where it's like, don't do this, don't do that. Just go catch the ball.
Just be a professional. And I honestly, the crazy part about this is probably the Bears' best receiving core. Man, I'd probably say going back. I mean, I'd have to go back to that 2006 year when they went to the Super Bowl. I know that they had some pretty good wide receivers. I don't remember them having a great wide receiver on the team. I just think they just had a collection of really good wide receivers. When they had Marshall was really good, and I know that they had.
They had Marshall and Elgin.
At one time they had, and I think that it was only for like one season though, and that was, but I only think that those were the only 2. I don't remember them having like a really good 3rd and 4th to go with them like that.
Yeah,
this might be one of the best Bears wide receiver core in the last 25 years, and I could be wrong. Like I said, I don't want to jump out on the limb. I got to really go back and study the stats just to make sure that, but. I mean, the way it's looking, when you got an accomplished guy like DJ Moore, who's already an accomplished Pro Bowl caliber player, and then you throw in and you get a mix of a young stud like Rome, who's definitely got all the pedigree to be something special. And now I'm hearing that Luther Burden, this kid, they're saying that he might, out of Ryan Pohl's own mouth, he might become better than Rome and DJ when it's all said and done. you're talking about a real serious wide receiver room.
He has the skills. He has the speed. It's just that he makes a lot of dumb decisions.
The head game.
Yeah, there was one game in Missouri, he got like 3 or 4 penalties in a row after making big plays. He made a 30-yard catch and then got a 15-yard penalty, and then made another 30-yard catch and got another 15-yard penalty right after it. Like, those are things that are just like, you need to work on this, man.
Yeah, if you can just put those little things together. Yeah, this wide receiver core, make no mistake, they're gonna be dangerous. And you know, as much as the secondary has been banged up, when the starters come back, that's why I'm not too concerned right now about the secondary, because I know that they got 2 key members that are out. Those guys are huge in the secondary. So I'm waiting for them to come back. I have been pleased, though, with the play of the defensive line, even though last night, Mahomes was squirming and getting around. That was a really huge turnover that they produced at the end for them to be able to be in a position to get that. That's to me the type of guts and grit that you want to see out of a team, and I want to see that out of that defense, because there's going to be times where you're going to need the defense to make a play.
Oh yeah,
it's going to be late in the game. Offense is going to need to get the ball back, and the defense has got to make a play.
Yep. And
to see that your depth on your team has got that mentality, then that leads me to believe that your starters have that same mentality too. So we were talking about, in the booth, in the production when we were waiting to come on, we were talking about this coaching staff, and I know we're getting ready to round up this show, but I just have to say still that I am thoroughly impressed with this coaching staff wholeheartedly. And if there's anybody that can guide the burden, it's the Antoine Randall, the wide receiver coach for the Bears.
Yep, I completely agree. I mean, I feel like that team is just put together. That coaching staff is just put together for them to succeed.
The build of this team, the succession of success, the build for success of this team is on the right path, and hopefully just got to be put all together. Now, obviously, they got to play it out on the field, the X's and O's. Caleb hasn't showed us nothing yet until he actually goes into that first game against Minnesota, and that's when we're going to have an idea. But like I told people, 4 games. First 4 games. We have to give them that.
Mm-hmm.
Give them the first 4 games before we start making any proclamations, before we start saying if they're Super Bowl contenders or if they're pretenders, whatever narrative gets painted, first 4 games. Cal, I want to thank you for joining, brother. I appreciate you coming on to the team.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming in. Next week we should have Brother Blake back, hopefully joining the show again. This is once again the Truth About Chicago Sports here on WRMN 1410 AM. We want to send a shout out to executive producer Maddie Ice McNeil, also our program director Dennis Sonar Green, and the boss man Dino. Thank you to all of our listeners out there. Make sure to tune in to us next week here on WRMN 1410 AM. The Truth About Chicago Sports.
Tune in to Big Top Sports
with Derek Geyer every weeknight from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m.
He'll have sports thoughts from the center ring of Chicagoland and to the outer rings from across the nation.
Weather from Chicago Cubs,
White Sox,
Bulls,
Bears,
Blackhawks,
Stars,
Fire,
Boomers, whatever the national story is of the day.
Geyer and his sports czar takes will either have you nodding in agreement,
Yelling at the radio,
or in all honesty,
a bit of both.
with the way the Chicagoland sports and sports are in general, there's bound to be
Thrills,
chills, and
oh my God moments. So get your snacks and libations ready.
because this is going to be a wild ride.
Big Top Sports with Derek Geyer's quirky and insightful Fanatics take.
will make you feel a little
Or a lot better about your Chicagoland sports viewing experiences.
Tune in to Big Top Sports with Derek Geyer every weeknight from 6 p.m.
to 8 p.m.
Your hometown radio station since 1949. We are WRMN AM 1410, Elgin time, 12 o'clock.
Breaking news this hour at townhall.com. I'm Bob Agnew in Washington. Julie Walker reports Texas's redrawn congressional map favoring the GOP is now a done deal.
The Texas Senate has given final approval to a new Republican-leading congressional voting map, sending it to Governor Greg Abbott, who is expected to quickly sign it into law, though Democrats have vowed to challenge it in court. President Trump has been pushing for the map to help the GOP maintain its slim majority in Congress in the 2026 midterm elections. It has 5 new districts that would favor Republicans. The effort by Trump and Texas's Republican majority legislature prompted state Democrats to hold a 2-week walkout and flee the state. It also kicked off a wave of redistricting efforts across the country. I'm Julie Walker.
White House correspondent Greg Clugston reports that the president continues to express frustration that Putin-Zelensky talks have yet to materialize.
Several days after announcing he had begun making arrangements for Russian President Putin and Ukrainian President Zelensky to meet, the president is unhappy with the pace of peace efforts.
I think over the next 2 weeks we're going to find out which way it's going to go, and I better be very happy.
On Friday, Russia's top diplomat made clear that Putin won't sit down with Zelensky until Ukraine agrees to certain concessions. Greg Clugston, the White House.
Senator Tom Cotton says all parties in the Russia-Ukraine dialogue are still sizing up their opponents.
I think right now we're still in the phase where everyone, President Trump, Zelensky, the European leaders, are testing whether Vladimir Putin is serious about any kind of peace negotiation. And if he's not, then we're going to have to collectively continue to show the strength that Ukraine and the United States have shown for the last 3.5 years.
Senator Cotton spoke this week with the Salem Radio Network. More on these stories at townhall.com.
What is your next success story? At University of Maryland Global Campus, you can succeed again with more than 135 affordable online degrees and certificates to help you move your career forward. From cybersecurity and AI to healthcare and MBA, our programs help you build critical thinking, leadership, and communication skills that set you apart in today's job market. Apply now and save with no application fee through September 3rd. Visit umgc.edu to get started. Certified to operate in Virginia by Chev.
Everybody is keeping an eye on the Fed and how an interest rate cut might affect gold prices. Gold has been hovering at around $3,400 an ounce for the last 2 months and is poised for dramatic growth with the next interest rate cut. If you have a qualified IRA or 401k, you could receive up to $10,000 in free gold and silver when you open your retirement account with Advantage Gold. Call 800-900-8000 now or visit AdvantageGold.com and get your free gold IRA guide. Consult with your financial and tax professionals before making investment decisions. Call 800-900-8000.
Congo's public prosecutors asked for the death penalty for former President Joseph Kabila. He's being tried in absentia for treason and war crimes tied to his involvement with the M23 rebel group. It's been a high-level military firing in the Trump administration.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has fired a general whose agency's initial intelligence assessment of damage to Iranian nuclear sites from U.S. strikes angered President Donald Trump. Lieutenant General Jeffrey Cruz will no longer serve as head of the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency. The firing is the latest upheaval in the U.S. military and intelligence agencies and comes a few months after details of a preliminary assessment of the U.S. strike on Iran were leaked to the media. That assessment found that Iran's nuclear program had only been set back by a few months. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
Breaking news and analysis at townhall.com. The jockey who rode horse racing's most iconic stallion to fame has passed away.
Hall of Fame jockey Ron Turcotte, who rode Secretariat to the Triple Crown in 1973, has died. He was 84. Turcotte's family said that the Canada-born jockey died of natural causes at his home in Drummond, New Brunswick on Friday. Turcotte won the Kentucky Derby, Preakness, and Belmont Stakes twice each from 1965 to 1973 before his riding career ended when he fell off a horse and suffered injuries that made him paraplegic. Secretariat's record time in the Belmont still stands 52 years later. I'm Gethin Coolbaugh.
Wall Street on Friday rallied to its best day in months after the head of the Federal Reserve hinted that cuts to interest rates may be forthcoming. The S&P 500 up by 1.5% of its value, near its all-time high. The Dow Jones Industrial Average did reach a new record high. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Join your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvid on our weekly radio hour, Chief Guard of the Republic, where we talk about all things national security, defense, personal security, safety, and dealing with law enforcement situations. Call in 847-931-1410. Ask us questions. We will get you answers. Every week, Saturday, noon to 1 on 1410 AM WRMN Elgin. Streaming on WRMN1410.com. Chat with us on WRMN's YouTube live channel.
Chicago defense attorney Mark Schieblo has co-authored the book titled DUI Jury Trial, which is a true story of a DUI case that he defended. The accused was an Illinois truck driver arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol. This book contains facts about the case from the date of the arrest up to the jury's verdict, and this nonfiction novel also includes the transcripts from the jury trial itself. The book DUI Jury Trial is now available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com.
Fixed Bayonets, comrades, and we're here for the Chief Guard of the Republic Radio Shoutout Show, Veteran Radio Shoutout Show, with your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvitt every Saturday, noon until 1. And while the Sox are playing, we're noon till 2. So you could hear us on 1410 AM. Of course, if you're listening to us now, you already know, because you're either on 1410 AM or you're on WRMN1410.com and you're streaming live, or you're on WRMN 1410's YouTube live channel. You can hit us up in the studio number, 847-931-1410, or the 505, that one, that's the old one. So 505-926-1410 is the text number. So live voice is 847-931-1410. Text 505-926-1410. So, Paul, let's give a shout out to our sometimes co-host Marla, who she got a very prestigious award, didn't she?
She did. It was 2 days ago, and she got the Starfisher Award from Governor State University. It was a wonderful occasion, and actually after that I took her out to dinner, and she was the only person in the school to get it that we know of, and it relates to student retention. So we're very pleased that Marla's not only that, she's very good at what she does, and she constantly achieves great points and goals, but she's an award-winning educator, and we wanted to give her a little shout out. So we wanted to congratulate her on that.
Yes. Well, hopefully we'll have Marla on soon again.
We will. She's looking forward to it. She mentioned that at the event, so she'd like to come on.
All right. And so next week we'll have Marla on.
That'd be good.
We'll have to figure out a good topic.
Sounds good.
Something that Marla's an expert on.
Okay.
She could educate us. The other shout out I want to do to one of our, two of our loyal listeners, Carol and Gary. They're friends of they're the stepfather and mother of one of my Army buddies. And Gary is not only a loyal listener, but he's read nearly all of my books except for the latest one, which is Alabama Triad. But I told him about it, and he's going to go check out Amazon. I'm sure he's going to read that, and he enjoys them. He enjoys the books. So, people do read my books, which is great.
Your books are excellent.
Yeah. And he has and you can find all my books if you Google my name, Michael F. Tuman, or Michael Francis Tuman, on Amazon. You'll find them there. But if you want an easier way to find them, because I'm not a million seller yet. But if you go to Psylink.net, PSYLINK.net, that's my personal webpage that I maintain. And, this is our Chief Guard of the Republic, CGR.Psylink.net, that Matt just put up, but the simple Psylink.net, if you get rid of the CGR in front of it. Or you go into links. Go to links.
Oh, okay.
Go to links.
There we go.
And there we go. Now, scroll down and click down on the flying monkey there. And that's what'll come up. And if you go to the novels, click on there. Yeah, the tab. Yeah, so you click on the novels tab on Psylink.net, and my novels come up. And you click on any one of those, and it takes you right to the a short description of them. Then click on the cover again, the cover art, and that takes you to Amazon's page, right where you can purchase it. And I try to keep them cheap. Some of these guys they write a book, and they charge $20, $25, make a profit, put all the effort into it. I don't blame them or anything, but I generally make less than 30 cents or less on my royalties per book, because I just want people to read them. I guess I'm well enough off. I really don't need the money. The money would be nice. I can invest it, leave it to my kids, generational wealth. But I just want people to read, and it's a very good form of therapy. You get out there, you can do all your rants, and then you could publish it to the world for free on Amazon. Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing is very nice with that. I'm not going to talk about the owners of Amazon or their business practices or anything, but Kindle's been very good to me. I like Kindle, and it helped me a lot. And one of these days, if we need to do a pre-recorded show, I'm going to pre-record my how I went around publishing the book on Amazon. So Gary is a woodworker. He went right into woodworking, after his retirement, and that's a good form of therapy too. That's one of the things my dad did. He bought a couple scroll saws. He would do woodworking. He would do a lot of dioramas, and then he did mosaics, where he would use the wood and other things he put together. But Gary does fancy wooden storage boxes. So little boxes, for like jewelry boxes, or to throw your keys into, or to throw other things. And some of them I saw, you go to his Etsy page, which is www.box, the letter N, M-O-R, no E at the end, M-O-R, .etsy, ETSY.com. So that's boxnmore, BOXNMOR, .etsy.com. And there it is. Matt pulled it up. And he's got some really cool stuff in there, because he does the woodworking, and he's got the nice Etsy page, show off your stuff, make a little money.
Nice.
And he uses mostly recovered wood. My dad used to know where all the furniture shops were, and he would go and he would find a lot of wood there, the nice wood and other stuff. And Gary says that he'll find old furniture that people are throwing out, and some of that stuff is really, like barnwood. It's well weathered, but it's good wood. Maple and stuff. Not just the IKEA stuff we get with the press board. So that's a little shout out to them. Now, one more shout out coming here. One of my buddies, George Gandera. He's a VFW guy, and he hit me up with a text this morning about the Potawatomi Trails Powwow up in Shiloh Park in Zion, Illinois, 2400 Dowie Memorial Road. 2400 Dowie Memorial Road in Zion, Illinois. That's just the Shiloh Park. So they have the big Potawatomi powwow, and they're going all day. They went yesterday. They're going today and Sunday. So tomorrow it's also going to be there. Now he's a big, he's a former Marine, and he's big with the VFW, and he's a real good guy. All right, real good guy on this stuff. And he also runs. He's in the, I think which VFW he's in. But he runs like a talking group for veterans to talk things out. Now he's not a VSO, veteran service officer or anything, but he's there to talk to. So, before I close out the show, I'll get you his VFW post. And any VFW post or any veterans organization, like I was saying before, I'm with the American Legion. I'm also with the VFW, although I'm just a part-timer with the VFW. I mean, I pay my dues. Right? I'm with the Polish American League of Veterans. PAVL, Polish American Veteran League. I'm with them. And then I also with the Chapter 37 of Special Forces Association. And I'm a little more active with them. And the VACCC, the Veterans Administration of Cook County. So there go my, and let's not forget my favorite one, the one that I go to every week, is the Dunkin' Donuts Veterans, and we meet at the Bunker Hill Woods in Niles off Caldwell Avenue, and every Tuesday at 9 a.m. You show up a little early. You can talk with all the other veterans. Maybe you meet a guy you knew from the service, and they put out a lot of good information. It's great to go there. So now, Paul.
Yeah.
We were going to talk about the projection of force for law enforcement. So in the news I saw, because we on the show here, we try to take some current events and some current news, and maybe a lot of people didn't hear about it because I think that the press was trying to make it look like we're going to war. We're going to war again. We sent 3 guided missile destroyers down off the Venezuela coast.
The Gravely, the Jason Dunham, and the Samson.
Yeah. And because Venezuela, right, we put out a warrant for Maduro, right? Or not?
He was indicted in the United States in 2020 under the I believe it was even the first Trump administration or whatever.
Yeah. And so he's the leader of a sovereign country, Venezuela,
which is kind of a narco-terrorist supporting country.
Yes. Former President Bush would have said that they were at the, if he was president at the time, they would have been included in the axis of evil. Remember that speech?
I do.
Yeah, that was a great speech, and all of a sudden, Libya just like, oh, we're not doing that anymore, and the IRA was like, maybe peace is better, and then we went and stomped on Iraq, so people saw that happen. But we're sending warships down there.
To date. We've sent approximately 4,000 naval and marine troops. There's also, I believe, at least one amphibious vessel, and there's an attack submarine going down there for protection of the group. And there's 4,000 that we're sending down there on ships and ready Marines. But Maduro's countered as of this morning with a threat to us that he has 4.5 million militia in ready and waiting.
Yeah,
and,
he could keep them ready and waiting.
Yeah, let's not forget 2 things too. And we kind of talked about this last week from what happened on Friday. There's also a little bit more at play in this. There's a push now by Putin to house some hypersonic missiles there.
Nice.
Not that it would matter too much, but there's a push that he's going to try to bolster this guy. And as we talked about, they like to create trouble for us, both the Soviet Union and the Chinese, because they want to keep us, always involved in something to take some pressure off of them. But, it occurred to me something, and I researched it before we got on the air. This is, we're coming up, and that's another point I'd like to make. I'd like to call out the legacy media for not doing what they did 50 years ago. Because from 1973 to 1976, every day there was the bicentennial minute. And people learned a lot about the country from these things. We're not doing that for the 250th anniversary. But I went back, and 202 years ago, there was the Monroe Doctrine.
Yes, I love the Monroe Doctrine.
And there's something unique about the Monroe Doctrine. okay? And it ties in exactly with the country we're talking about. Venezuela was a deadbeat, okay? Maybe they're still a deadbeat. You know, when you got trouble in the hood, it always usually comes from the same house, okay? And they were welching on their commitments to Europe at the time, okay? And Monroe was concerned that he didn't want, you know, Napoleon and other type of people to be coming here and, you know, creating a problem in our hemisphere. So he said, hey, as to what's going on here, we're going to be the people that are going to be involved, primarily because we didn't want these foreign aggressors to take a hold, which turned out to happen like about 100 years later, okay? So we passed the Monroe Doctrine. Well, again, about 121 years ago, we had a president called Roosevelt, and he invented the corollary, or the Roosevelt corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. And what he said is, if there's any trouble here, we're going to take care of it. Now, didn't matter if it's political, didn't matter if it's military, or, they had the opium problem in the Far East. It doesn't matter if it's narco-terrorism, okay? We're going to step in. So there's nothing new about this. Anybody that thinks this is wrong probably flunked history, and they should have gone back to school, okay? Because this is something that's been in effect now for 120 and even longer, 202 years ago. So anybody that thinks that there's something improper about what we're doing needs to step back and maybe find another cause to be worried about.
Okay, so one of the things in international law, international maritime law, is that any country that suspects any ship out there of human trafficking, they could go and board that. They'll go and board that ship to prevent human trafficking, to free, like slavery. That is the main thing. And the other thing was piracy. All right, so they could fight pirates. All right, those are two things in maritime law. What they don't really mention is narco trafficking at the time. Because the opium trade was big with the British back in the day. They loved their opium. They're passing it around to everybody. And one of the first major seizures was in San Francisco of opium coming into this country. Now, there are weapons of war, all right? Guns, explosives, bombs that could be smuggled in, all right? And one of the big fears, and that Tom Clancy had written about it, biological agents or chemical agents coming into the country. But the weapon that Venezuela has been using against the United States to weaken the United States, because they don't like us, we don't like their government, we don't like their leadership, all right? We don't like their authoritarian dictatorship under the guise of socialism and communism, all right? So they are sending in their criminals and their mentally disturbed people. So CNC, criminals and crazies. All right? So they're sending the criminals and crazies into the United States via the big, what do they call the caravans. So you empty your prisons, you empty your crazy hospitals, you put these people all in the caravan, and you surround them by people that are just looking for a better way of life, because you destroyed your way of life in Venezuela. So people are fleeing anyways.
You're typical real displaced persons.
Yeah, and they are a human shields and cover for these guys to get across the border. Once they're across the border, the crazies become our problem. The crime becomes our problem. All right. And we have to spend capital and blood, U.S. blood, to fight that on our own soil, right? Which is why we're stopping them before they get in. The other weapon that they use against us is narcotics. The main one being cocaine coming in from there. Not so much, it used to be huge things of pot coming in, right? Marijuana coming in from Mexico and everything. Now, not so much. Yeah, everyone grows it. It's grown everywhere. It's almost legal everywhere, but not federally, right? So there's no point in smuggling into the United States. There's no cash in it anymore, right? But the cocaine, we don't grow the coca plant in the United States. We don't process the raw coca leaves into cocaine and then pack it up in highly concentrated form and bring it across the border, which sometimes causes people to overdose or causes people to become addicted. And they're paying money to criminal organizations. And those criminal organizations are shipping that money back to Venezuela, to the cartels down there in Mexico, which are influencing the politics in those countries through money, but also through force. So our own people being addicted to the substance are giving their money to these criminals and propping up their country. So it's in their best interest, even though they'll deny it because, oh, then you look bad to the world, right? Oh, they're narco traffickers, right? They're like, no, but tolerate it. So you send the Navy down there to spot the boats coming out and trying to smuggle it in. And the nice thing about these guided missile destroyers, and right, we talk about a destroyer like in World War I and World War II. Other than frigates, destroyers were like the smallest battleship. Destroyers, escorts, but they were the smallest ship of the line. You would talk about destroyers, cruisers, and battleships, and aircraft carriers. And no one really talked about the frigates or the destroyer escorts or the minesweepers, which were still ships of war, but they weren't capital ships, so to speak. But we send these capital ships down there. They have really, really good radar. Really good radar. And they have really good sonar because now they're using submarines, right? So they could use they're like floating islands to spot the stuff. And then when they spot it, they can interdict it through the Coast Guard because they don't have the law enforcement authority, but the Coast Guard does. And the boats and the ships, depends on who they're flagged out of. So it's a projection of our force, using our force to move the Coast Guard, to support the Coast Guard right out there, which is law enforcement. They're not Department of Defense. They are Homeland Security. And what are they doing? They're defending our country from the narcotics coming in, much like ICE is and the Border Patrol is on our southern border. All right, so it's a defense of the country because they're trying to poison us. They're not going to call it chemical warfare. They're not going to call it biological warfare, but it's actually both. And we need to stop it. And we're not going to bomb Venezuela. We're not going to mine their ports, but we're going to be there. All right. So when we come back, we're going to talk more about the projection of force for law enforcement to defend the nation. If you want to call in to 847-931-1410. Want to read some action-packed, exciting pulp fiction? Read the works of Michael Tooman, now featuring the international crime thriller, I Married a Bot Madam. Available on Amazon in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle editions. The paperback is also available at other book retailers. Check out Michael Tooman's webpage at Scilink.net. That's Papa, Sierra, Yankee, Lima, India, November, Kilo, November Echo Tango.
This is Larry Jones, and I'd like to talk to you about my bank, American Eagle Bank in South Elgin. Has your bank changed names in the last 10 years? Is your bank another faceless branch with headquarters in another city? Are you tired of earning next to nothing on your savings account or certificates of deposit, or does your personal banker treat you like a stranger? If you answered yes to any of those questions, then you're ready for a new banking experience, and American Eagle is the place for you. American Eagle is a locally owned independent bank that's rooted in the community, and American Eagle customers are greeted by name and treated with the respect that they deserve. American Eagle has an innovative program, Eagle Savings, that teaches your children to save while earning prizes and rewards. American Eagle offers great rates on certificates of deposit. My bank is located in South Elgin on Randall Road between the Target and Caputo's and is open Monday through Saturday. Give them a call at 847-742-7400, and a real person will answer the phone. American Eagle Bank, a place where you matter.
If you turned 65 recently like me, it's important you find a Medicare Advantage plan that gives you the coverage you're looking for. But finding one can be difficult. The best thing I did, and I suggest you do the same, is call a licensed insurance agent and let them walk you through your Medicare Advantage plan options. There are so many benefits you have access to, so make the call now and let the representatives explain everything to you. Our licensed insurance agents can offer you a variety of Medicare Advantage plans. Plus, the call is free, the information is free, and there's no obligation to enroll. We're here to make it easy for you to select a Medicare Advantage plan that may work for your needs. Finding a Medicare Advantage plan can be easy if you do what I did. Make a quick call right now to learn more. Thank you.
800-433-3082. 800-433-3082. 800-433-3082. That's 800-433-3082.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. The Alzheimer's Association provides care, support, and research to help you take control of the situation with your family and manage the disease together. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together. Visit alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Join your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvitt on our weekly radio hour, Chief Guard of the Republic, where we talk about all things national security, defense, personal security, safety, and dealing with law enforcement situations. Call in 847-931-1410. Ask us questions. We will get you answers. Every week, Saturday, noon to 1 on 1410 AM WRMN Elgin. Streaming on WRMN1410.com. Chat with us on WRMN's YouTube live channel. Fixed bayonets, comrades. We're back with the Chief Guard of the Republic YouTube live channel. And, you know, if anyone comes out, like you said, Paul, you have to study just the slightest bit of history to know that this is not unprecedented.
It's like
There's
they say in the
precedence for it.
Bible, there's nothing new under the sun.
Yes, you know, but again, then you got to go with Shakespeare, right? There are more things on heaven and earth than you have ever imagined.
Correct.
However, what was it? Jefferson, one of our founding fathers and the writer of the Declaration of Independence and a strong contributor to the Constitution, right? He sent Marines to the Mediterranean, way away from the United States.
Also, the Ivory Coast and Tripoli and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because there was piracy going on, and they were seizing U.S. vessels, trade vessels, and at that time, trade was, sea trade
was extremely important to the United States. We didn't have as much hard industry that was producing stuff, but we had a lot of foodstuffs, lumber, furs, animal products, everything else that we needed to export. And if it gets seized by the pirates, then we're losing the taxes and, well, the tariffs out of that. And people aren't making profit. So the narco traffickers are the pirates of today. You know, they may not be seasoned ships. They may not be stealing, you know, the cargoes and everything and selling people into slavery as slavers, but they're creating slaves out of people with the narcotics. So the best way to prevent that is to, well, the best way to prevent it, and we didn't do it in Afghanistan. It would have been I don't, you know, that's getting really off the deep end. People not, it's a legit question. Why didn't we just burn all the poppy fields and salt the earth in Afghanistan? We would have eliminated 75% of the heroin in the world just by nailing Afghanistan and burning those poppy fields. One, it was the only thing they knew how to grow. That was that had been in their culture for hundreds and hundreds of years, and those people supported Karzai, whoever. We didn't want to make them mad and everything, and we couldn't teach them to grow a labor-intensive crop like corn or wheat, which, you know, requires the harvesting, the processing, and then selling it overseas to exporting it to make a profit. With the poppies, they're kind of weeds. You know, those flowers grow, and then all the fighting stops. Everything stops during harvest time because that is the one time where it's very labor intensive. They actually have to go and slice the stem in of the flower and get the goo out of it and make raw opium, and then they make, you know, heroin out of that. But we didn't.
We ran into the same problem in Vietnam, though, too, with the Iron Triangle and all that kind of stuff, too.
Yeah, you know, they're producing this because, one, it's a pretty easy crop. Two, it's huge profits, right? Nope. Oh, here goes the police.
I want to give a shout out to Brendan and Cleveland Dennis. They were on. They were on the YouTube chatting. Yeah,
YouTube chat there. So we go down now. You know, we're stopping this, or making it more expensive, or making it more labor intensive. You know, if you just make it so difficult and so expensive to move your product, then you're forcing someone to change their product, to change their business model. You know, change your business model. That's one of the things down there. We don't have a large enough Navy or military, but we have an efficient one and a good quality one. But if we had a large enough one, we could, you know, embargo, you know, like I said, mine the ports of Venezuela, make sure nothing came out, actually put a full embargo on there, nothing gets out of there. And then we can, then we have to get into with Colombia and the other countries, and we'd have to put patrols on the border to make sure none of this stuff got out. And then they could just grow it forever, right? Well, Colombia, they grow it there too. But they could process it forever, and it'll just stack up in warehouses, you know, because they're not able to sell it. And then that will less bolster the Venezuelan government, who's, you know, the only other thing they get money from is oil, right? And we put
baseball,
yeah. We put restrictions on their oil. You know, we're like, hey, you're not friendly to us. We're gonna, anyone that trades with you for oil, they're not going to have favored trade status with the United States. We're doing that to the Russians.
Don't also forget one thing. To my knowledge, the only non-Arabic country in OPEC is Venezuela.
Yes. Yes, and
don't forget about that.
They used to be a spoiler. OPEC. And they had to bring them into OPEC because they were that spoiler. And now they're still a spoiler because they got to undercut everyone, because if people want to buy their oil, they're going to have trouble. Like the Chinese don't care. Chinese are just going to buy all the Venezuelan oil they could get. But since no one else is buying it from them, they get it at a deep discount. So they're getting it at a deep discount. The Venezuelans ain't making the profit they have, right? Which they used to have when they weren't a communist country. They used to have huge profits, and the money went to build infrastructure and everything else. Once the government seized all that, everything, it all fell apart. And now, so we're forcing their business. The other thing, so Jefferson was Jefferson was more than 200 years ago when he was doing that. But about 110 years ago, you had the Pershings. Was it Pershing, right? Pershing's punitive expedition down into Mexico. Not the Mexican-American War.
1916.
Yeah. So he sends Woodrow Wilson, right, a Democrat, right, sends the Pershing on a punitive expedition. He didn't go to war with Mexico, but again, Mexico wasn't doing anything about these banditos. They either didn't have the means or they didn't have the will to do it. So they were coming up raiding the United States, which that's kind of like an invasion, but the Mexican government could always say, oh, those are just criminals. We can't do anything about that. So we went and did something about that. Now, you talked about the hypersonic missiles, and Putin wanted to put hypersonic missiles. Didn't we have a little problem with that back in the 60s in Cuba?
Yeah. It was a little bit different, though, because the technology was much different, and the missiles in Cuba were medium range, okay? And I don't think these hypersonics are long enough to reach the United States. I was just watching a video about it before the show was on, but it's another issue is Russia's getting itself into a box because thanks to Zelensky, he kind of destroyed a lot of their long-range bomber fleet, and Russia was kind of starting to rely on these hypersonics, and they've used the first hypersonic in combat. I think they did it on Kiev. But it didn't have a warhead. It was just a kinetic destruction. So I think that he's going to be limited, especially with the embargoes on him and the pressure on him and the other things. That it's a show more than a danger, but in that it's a show, it's something that because you never know what results from that. You want to protect yourself in the long term for the possibility of it expanding or becoming a better technology. But yes, it's almost a replay of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and our response though is almost a replay in that it's like a blockade type embargo. And it's, again, if people don't understand what happened before, they won't know what's happening in the future. And I fault our education system for that. I fault our woke educators for that in pushing an agenda of today without recognizing the problems of the past. It does us no good if we're pushing a wokeness and we forget about how we got to where we are and the dangers that we fought and the future that, because somebody's looking at that. Somebody always goes to the back and instead of reinventing the wheel, they either manipulate it or modernize it and move it forward. And we're losing that ability in our country. and our nation.
And so, okay, it's looking at stuff, right? This is why history is important, and to know how things worked out and everything, to plan on it, because it's human nature. Warfare changes in modernity and lethality and everything, but it's kind of, a lot of things are standard, along with projecting your force and two strong powers going at it, right? And like, okay, so in the missile crisis, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Russians were building missile bases in Cuba. We spotted that and we said, hey, this is pretty close to Miami, right? This is within range. They could hit a major city in the United States with missiles and wipe out most of Florida, right? Or even get something maybe, but we didn't want them there. And
well, the whole area was Florida, Texas, Louisiana, the Carolinas, and even, they could have potentially gotten the District of Columbia with the ranges that they hit.
But they could also control the sea lanes over there with that because
correct.
They're land based. All right, so that was Khrushchev's response to us having U.S. missiles in Turkey,
and also in West Germany too.
But Turkey was bordering the Soviet Union.
Correct.
West Germany bordered East Germany. All right, and
didn't we also have missiles in Greece too?
I'm not sure, but that's possible. But again, Greece is kind of closer, but it doesn't border Russia. But
right, but what he didn't know at the time was we were planning on drawing down those bases anyway, because we had vast improvements in our sea-launched ballistic missiles, and it wasn't until they kind of stalled our plans for the George Washington class with the Polaris that they started to get parity. Because I remember as far back as when I was a kid, and it's kind of an expensive model now. They had the Gulf class submarine, and to them that was their big thing. The missiles were in the conning tower, and they had 3 missiles, and they like when we traversed with the Nautilus under the Arctic cap, they actually surfaced in the Arctic and test launched a couple, but they were through the Gulf class submarine. But again, it had 3 missiles. I don't know if it had a MIRV or a MARV technology where they could put 3 or 4 warheads on it and target them independently. But I mean, their missiles were vastly inferior to ours at the time. And and that's another point. That is another point. We've let our manufacturing capability, particularly of our submarines, lacking, where we're having a problem because every 3 years we're losing 1 sub on patrol for either a refit or normal crew rotation or whatever, and we're not. And then we a couple of years ago we had an accident where a submarine actually hit an underwater barrier or something, and it severely damaged it. That submarine's not coming back online, I heard, till 27 or 28, which takes, every time you lose a sub, you're losing like 18-20% of your retaliatory capability and they've turned some of the ballistic missile subs into sea-launched cruise missile platforms. I believe there's 3 of them, and they used that recently, one of them in Iran, for the nuclear reactors. So I blame our officials in not having us prepared for the long haul, especially with, I'm going back to China with their increasing, production of ships. I mean, their ships aren't great, but they don't have to be. Because what they want is close by.
The T-34, the Panzers, were better designed, better sloping armor, had guns, had highly trained crews, and they were wiped out by the Sherman and the T-34 because those were made in massive numbers. You could hit 4 T-34s before the fifth one came up behind you and blew you up.
Right.
And same thing with the Shermans, you win. All right, so there's a thing called quantity over quality. But we want...
But we converted all our major industrial capability, like automobiles and farm implement, to making tanks. I mean, we were making 50,000 of those tanks. I mean, we were giving those babies away to lend-lease countries, you know, in the massive numbers. You know, I mean, we're not doing that now. I mean, the closest thing to that, and I'll give them props for this, was during the first part of the pandemic when President Trump at the time converted for those respirators. He had all these companies reconvert, open up, and make so many respirators they were giving.
That was a law passed where he has control of that. He can take, you know, you'd think it would be National Socialism, right? Where he seizes the company. He doesn't really seize the company. He just says, you'll do it or you'll shut down.
Right.
You know? And so, yeah, and in time of war, they can do that, right? Because what if Ford or Chrysler or GM, we're going to go to war, and that's one of the reasons we bolstered these auto manufacturing in the United States, is because in case we need to go to war and we need to make more armored cars, we need to make more Abrams tanks. You know, they're all going to do it under license, but they're going to be producing them, or they're going to be producing parts, and they're, you know, just like how many companies produce the M1 rifle?
At least 5.
Yeah.
You had Springfield, you had Winchester, you had International Harvester, you had H&R, and I think there was a couple other ones in there. And the same thing's true about the 45 automatic. In World War I, you had the ones in Toronto, North America, and the most valuable. Then you had Remington, and then you had Colt itself, and then you had Springfield. World War II, you had Remington, you had Ithaca, you had Colt, you had Springfield, and then you had Union Switch and Signal, and then you might have also had Singer or something like that. So you know, even you know, our logo, fixed bayonets. You know, you have Imperial, you have Colt, you have you know, other manufacturers, you have some farm implement companies. You're able to transition. You know, and again, what we were talking about last week, the M1917. You had a Winchester, you had a Remington, and you had Remington's offshoot of Eddystone. You know, and then look, Chicago, Rockola, M1 carbines, United Postal Meter. You had Saginaw, which was Michigan, Guide Light Division. You had all that stuff, but we don't have that. We've let that go because we are, you know, NAFTA. Okay. You know, a couple of years ago, I went to get my car fixed at the local Ford dealer. Right?
Yep.
Looking at it, engine, Venezuela, engine, Mexico, engine, Colombia. You know, so what? You know, and obviously, you know, in the trade, they call it the data package. Okay, that's all the specs and all the stuff. That's the super secret stuff. Well, we're giving that away. Okay, and then we're buying the parts back. That's the trade. We're not doing that here. Yeah, I mean, what was the last TV? I think used to be manufactured. I can't think of the name. No, there was another one. There was a very small manufacturer of color TVs, and I think they went out of business. No. It was like I can't think of what it was. It was a real small one, and they were quite pricey, but they were all made in America. We don't even do that stuff anymore, and that's what's really sad. I mean, you know, say there's something big, say there's huge calamities or something like that. We have to be able to hit the ground at least running within 90 days, and we don't do that. We're too busy worrying about our hourly wage, our benefits package, our this, our that. Well, you know what? When the pipeline stops, there is no benefits package.
Yep.
We need to start getting ready for the stuff we need here.
So we talked about that before when we're talking about tariffs, all right?
Right.
And it's important. The tariffs on steel are important so that you can encourage U.S. steel manufacturing to keep that up. Because just like we bolster these car companies, who the only reason they're in business is because they're bolstered, right, by the United States government. These guys are so incompetent in their business models, right? They're losing. Their CEOs are like, oh, dude, it's like the Simpsons episode where Homer designs a car and he puts the whole company out of business. Right? But getting back to these, so history repeats itself, but Putin isn't going to put hypersonic missiles in Venezuela. That's a threat. Can he get them there if we blockade them by sea? Yes, he can, because he has an Antonov, which is the largest cargo aircraft in the world. We were using it to move Abrams into Afghanistan. We were actually contracting with Russian companies to move our equipment in Afghanistan with their aircraft that we don't have the capabilities of. Can they get it down? Can they get the stuff down there? Yes. Would it be cost prohibitive? Yes. All right. Would they have to send their people in trained to use that? Yes. Would those hypersonic missiles be effectively useless? Because that's like pushing the red button, right? You don't want to push the red button, but you want to have the red button there to push in case you need to. But you never want to push it. It should say, don't push this button. Well, you put that on if someone's going to push it. All right. So you get where I'm going, Paul?
I do.
It's kind of it's almost like an idle threat. But can he do it? I'm sorry, Venezuela's a sovereign country. Can they ask for help from the Russians? Sure they can. Can they ask for help for the Chinese? Sure they can. Does it benefit Russia and China to have us worrying about these little petty dictators all around our area and having to keep everything clear? It absolutely does. It benefits them immensely that we're not directly focused on our interior, right? And on projecting power to where it needs to go. All right, so when we come back, talk some more about this and maybe go back to the tariff talk again. Want to read some action-packed, exciting pulp fiction? Read the works of Michael Tooman, now featuring the international crime thriller, I Married a Bot Madam. Available on Amazon in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle editions. The paperback is also available at other book retailers. Check out Michael Tooman's webpage at Scilink.net. That's Papa, Sierra, Yankee, Lima, India, November, Kilo, dot, November, Echo, Tango.
Join your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvitt on our weekly radio hour, Chief Guard of the Republic, where we talk about all things national security, defense, personal security, safety, and dealing with law enforcement situations. Call in 847-931-1410. Ask us questions. We will get you answers. Every week, Saturday, noon to 1 on 1410 AM WRMN Elgin. Streaming on WRMN1410.com. Chat with us on WRMN's YouTube live channel.
Your hometown radio station since 1949. We are WRMN AM 1410, Elgin time, 1 o'clock.
With Washington, the Texas Senate has given final approval to a new Republican-leaning congressional voting map. They've sent it on to Governor Greg Abbott, who is expected to sign it. President Trump has been pushing for the map to help the GOP maintain its slim majority in Congress. in the 2026 midterm elections, but Democrats are playing similar games in the state of California where they're redistricting and coming up with about 5 additional seats, so it should balance out. All eyes are on Fed Chair Jerome Powell and the prospects of an interest rate cut.
Powell is leaving the door open ever so slightly to a cut, even with stubbornly high inflation and rising unemployment.
The shifting balance of risks may warrant adjusting our policy stance.
Speaking in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Powell said inflation could be impacted by tariffs.
The effects of tariffs on consumer prices are now clearly visible. We expect those effects to accumulate over coming months with high uncertainty about both timing and amounts.
At the White House, President Trump says Powell should have done something about interest rates sooner.
You should have cut him a year ago. He's too late.
Ed Donahue, Washington.
Correspondent Julie Walker has an update on that tour bus rollover that killed 5 people in western New York.
A tour bus returning to New York City from Niagara Falls with 54 people aboard crashes, rolling on its side on the highway Friday, killing 5 passengers and injuring many others, ages 1 to 74. Major Andre Ray with New York State Police says no children were among the dead, but there were some sent to the hospital.
It's believed the operator became distracted, lost control, overcorrected. And with the investigation still underway, no charges have been filed at this point.
Audio courtesy WKBW. Ray says an investigation is underway. Julie Walker, New York.
More on these stories at townhall.com.
Gain a global perspective and specialized skills that many of today's top employers are seeking with an MBA from University of Maryland Global Campus. Study online and complete your degree in just 16 months for about $21K. Choose from MBA specializations in global business, marketing, HR, finance, and more. No application fee if you apply by September 3rd. Learn more at umgc.edu. That's umgc.edu. Certified to operate in Virginia by Chev.
Everybody is keeping an eye on the Fed and how an interest rate cut might affect gold prices. Gold has been hovering at around $3,400 an ounce for the last 2 months and is poised for dramatic growth with the next interest rate cut. If you have a qualified IRA or 401k, you could receive up to $10,000 in free gold and silver when you open your retirement account with Advantage Gold. Call 800-900-8000 now or visit AdvantageGold.com and get your free gold IRA guide. Consult with your financial and tax professionals before making investment decisions. Call 800-900-8000.
President Trump is threatening to remove the mayor of Washington, D.C.
After ordering a federal takeover of the D.C. police force, the president is boasting about a safer nation's capital, and he has a warning for Washington Mayor Muriel Bowser.
It was unsafe. It was horrible. And Mayor Bowser better get her act straight or she won't be mayor very long because we'll take it over with the federal government, run it like it's supposed to be run.
Meanwhile, the Pentagon has ordered National Guard troops patrolling the streets of D.C. to start carrying firearms. Greg Clugston, the White House.
And so far, the president's takeover of D.C. has been effective. No murders committed in the last week. That is rare for the nation's capital of late. False reports of active shooters led to panic and temporary lockdowns at 2 U.S. universities. This week, they were Villanova University outside Philadelphia and the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. Breaking news and analysis at townhall.com. North Korea now threatening to pursue its nuclear ambitions in reaction to scheduled joint military exercises between the U.S. and South Korea.
The 11-day Ulchi Freedom Shield, which the Allies describe as defensive, mobilizes 21,000 troops, including 18,000 South Koreans, for computer-simulated operations and field training. North Korea has long denounced the Allies' joint drills as invasion rehearsals. Kim has often used them to justify his own military displays and testing activities aimed at expanding his nuclear weapons program. The Korean peninsula remains in a technical state of war, divided by the demilitarized zone into North Korea and South Korea. I'm Lawrence Brooks.
The Pentagon has fired the Defense Intelligence Agency chief. That move came after the agency drafted a preliminary report contradicting President Trump's contention the U.S. strikes had obliterated nuclear sites at Iran, and then that report was leaked to the public. More from...
Are you dreaming of a getaway? Want to leave the stress of daily life behind? Whether it's a relaxing cruise or an adventurous land escape, planning the perfect vacation doesn't have to be a hassle. At Cruises International, they specialize in vacation destinations, land and sea, making your dreams come true. Located at 1721 Moon Lake Boulevard in Hoffman Estates, Cruises International isn't just about booking travel. They're your personal concierge, trusted travel advisor, and advocate. Your preferences are unique, and they'll take the time to understand exactly what you're looking for. From personalized service to their global network of specialists, they ensure that your vacation is tailor-made just for you. It's time to plan the vacation of a lifetime. Call 800-255-7447. That's 800-255-7447 today and speak to a cruise and vacation expert. Cruises International. It's time to set sail to your dream destination.
Fixed Bayonets, comrades, we're back for the second half of the Chief Guard of the Republic radio show. This second half is brought to you by the Chicago White Sox. Giving me a second hour on the radio just by their existence. So my buddy George R. Gandara, he is at VFW Post 8741 in Libertyville, Illinois. So if you're looking for someone to talk to about your veterans, some veterans tales, or you just want to talk something out, George, find out when the meetings are at 8741 and go see George there. I don't want to really put out his phone number or anything because he could send me that if it's okay, if he's listening in, because I don't want, there we go, 8741. Yeah, I don't want him getting spammed and then blaming me or whatever, but get that. He's a good guy. So going to
the television manufacturer I was thinking of was Curtis Mathis. That was one of the last U.S. manufacturers of color TVs.
Yeah. Going back to the tariffs. All right. So one of the things now is that TVs used to involve a lot of vacuum tubes, right? A lot of larger components. Right now, it's a computer, prints out a circuit board, the robot goes in, solders everything together, they put the little pieces in, or over in the East, they have people with little itty-bitty fingers that do the same thing, put the pieces in real quick. And they put it together, and like televisions that cost $2,000 4 years ago are going on sale at Walmart for $279 because the new things keep coming and coming, and the technology's there, and it's getting pushed. And this is coming back to something that you're talking about. It gets pushed by the consumers. The consumers are pushing technology. The war technology is pushed by competitors who could get the better technology out there to win the war, to win the battle. So everyone's like one-upping the other guy on everything. So what you're saying about hypersonic missiles, the Russians being a more authoritarian state, were able to put a lot more money into research and development on these missiles because they looked at where can we outdo the U.S., where can we outdo China, where can we have, the corner the market on something, right? Corner the market on something, and hypersonic missiles. So they put all their work into it, and when they dropped these around Kiev, right? Exactly what you said. They didn't have warheads in them. That was a warning. That was sending a message to the U.S. And look at the destruction it does without a warhead. All right? So they don't even need to put explosives on them, and it'll do mass destruction. But even then, if they filled it up with explosives, it probably wouldn't do more destructions because it's moving so fast. When a meteor hits the Earth and makes that huge foxhole, right? Huge foxhole out there in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't have any explosives in it. It's just kinetic energy. It's weight and speed, and it causes everything there. So that's where they jumped ahead of us in technology. They also jumped ahead of us in electronic warfare technology. Because during Afghanistan and Iraq, you know, when you're dealing with people on the level of Fred Flintstone and Barty Rubble in their warfare type, electronic warfare didn't really work out too well. But human did. Right, so that's where we need to keep it up, right? And we can't, and sometimes you cannot rely on the consumers to push the product that we need for defense. That's why it was very important with steel tariffs. Now, manufacturing, people building, you know, huge skyscrapers, you know, all this stuff, they want cheap steel. They want to get steel because then it costs them less and they make more profit. So they're going to go and they're going to import it because the Chinese make it with slave labor and they don't care about the profits. Sometimes they just undercut us because if they know they can shut down one of our steel mills by undercutting the price, that's a win for them. They didn't have to bomb it, it just went out of business. And then later on, when all the steel mills are gone in the U.S. and they're not producing anymore, and it's very expensive to restart and rebuild those mills, what are the Chinese going to do with their steel? They're going to raise the price because they're going to have market cornered. So what you do is you make the Chinese steel more expensive than U.S. steel no matter what. U.S. steel should always be cheaper than Chinese steel. Or at least the Chinese steel should be the same price, but it costs more to ship it over here. So then then like with when President Trump had all the respirators made, right? Forced them to make respirators. Right? Then you got to go in and you got to force a company to say, no, you're going to produce more steel because it's necessary. Maybe you could have the U.S. government. I'd make myself laugh. That's making myself laugh. You could have the U.S. government open up its own steel mill. Now, that's funny, huh, Paul?
Yeah. Like the post office and all kinds of other things. Yeah.
California high-speed rail.
Right.
We'll let the government take care of this. Okay. But here's a story, and true story, right? So you had Fort Sheridan, which was on the BRAC list, with the base realignment and closing, the BRAC list, because they felt that the military had declined after Vietnam. You know, we had a peace dividend in the 90s. The Soviet Union had fallen apart. You know, we didn't need a big standing army to go up against the big red threat back then. And so they started closing a lot of bases. And one of the bases they decided to close down as a full-time base was Fort Sheridan. But they had already, they knew they were going to close it down, but they had a 5-year plan to build a new PX and a new commissary. Brand new, big, a PX is post-exchange. It's kind of like a Kmart or not so much a Walmart, but a Kmart, a Kohl's, kind of like a Kohl's, all right? For the troops to get, you know, household stuff and equipment they need. And then you had a commissary, which is a subsidized grocery store because the lower level GIs really don't get paid that much. So you make sure that groceries are a little cheaper and everything. And they had a commissary on Fort Sheridan and they had a PX on Fort Sheridan, but they were in old buildings that weren't designed to do that. They were old warehouses. So they said, we're going to build new ones. And they had this 5-year plan. But they knew, before they built them, they knew that Fort Sheridan was going to close. So they built these new buildings, multi-million-dollar buildings, and they're only open for 2 years before the base closes. And now the buildings weren't designed to be military buildings, but they end up having to be reutilized by reserve units that were left at Fort Sheridan. And they had to move into these buildings which weren't designed to help them. Then, like my unit was in a old barracks because Fort Sheridan used to be the home of Recruiting Command, and that's where they taught the school. So you get recruiters come there, and they would stay there while they were learning to be recruiters and everything. And so Recruiting Command shut down. I don't know where they went. They're somewhere else. They're not at Fort Sheridan. And they moved a reserve unit into that building because the World War II buildings were finally falling apart, right? So they moved, and again, the building's not designed to hold a military unit. It's not designed for administrative. So we had a problem with the water fountain in there. This is true story, all right? And we're constantly asking for that water fountain to be fixed, replaced. I mean, it's right as you walk in the door, you know? It's a water fountain. But it was always broke, clogged, whatever. They never came in to fix it. Now, when they finally decided to tear this building down, and it'd been on the list to be torn down for years while they were backlogged building the other building, which had to be condemned after they built it. You know, but here comes the Army Corps of Engineers the day before they tear down this building. The day before
they fixed it.
They put in a brand new water fountain, brand new. The day before they took, the building has been unoccupied for months. And I'm like, they could have done that any time. So get the government to run something like that, right? I would have fixed it myself, you know, but, you're not a contractor. You know, hey, give me some op funds, buy a water fountain. I'll tear this thing off the wall and put a new one in. Well, you're not with the Corps of Engineers. I says, no, but I could turn a wrench. Yes, I'm sure the plumbers out there, you're good at what you do. You're very good at what you do. When I have something really complicated, I call a plumber in, a good plumber. But can I do basic stuff? All right. So, the government needs to change a way a lot of things work, right? Especially the tariffs. I'm glad the tariffs are out there, and it needs to be focused on our national defense to defend the country. We just can't tariff anything, right? In my opinion, well, we should tariff everything. What am I saying? Tariffs are better than income tax. And you'll have people.
I'll second that.
You'll have people say, "Oh no, tariffs are just a tax on the poor." Well, okay, so is the lottery. The lottery's the ultimate tax on the poor. That is. But, and have you paid your poor tax this week for the Powerball?
No.
$700 million. What would you do with it?
A lot.
Like I said, the old joke, right? What would you do with $700 million? I would spend half of it on wine, women, and song, and then I would spend the other half foolishly. Matt gets it.
Yes.
All right, so
there was a guy who stole a lot of money one time, and it was a case we did in Cook County, and Jay Leno actually did a joke on it, and the joke was, you know, the guy stole like $5 million. I'm making the number up, and you know he spent the money on hookers and gambling and trips, and then he spent the other half on some dumb stuff. So so it could happen.
Yeah. All right, so when you're talking about electronics, television sets, one of the main things is microchips, microprocessors, right? The United States, beyond a doubt, because of all of our universities and all of our smart people, and the number one thing, the consumer's pushing it. You don't hear about this. This technology was developed at the University of Tokyo. You don't hear this technology was developed at the University of South Korea. You hear this technology was developed at MIT, all right, Stanford, Illinois Institute of Technology, one of the big tech schools.
Pepperdine, something like that.
In the United States. And then the foreign students here, everyone that comes to learn something comes here, right? Especially technical stuff. You don't see a lot of foreign students coming over here for art or for
art appreciation or violin classical training.
Yeah, well, maybe the Berkeley School of Music. Maybe you have a few in there for classical music training. It's supposed to be one of the best music schools in the world, and again, that's in the United States, right? But then they go back to their home country, and they have all the technology in their head, and suddenly Sony is building Walkman and making a fortune off of it. So where was the Apple iPhone developed?
In Silicon Valley?
Yeah, in the United States. Korea didn't do it. Japan didn't do it. Where are they being made, though?
Over there.
Over there. I bought a phone. I can't even remember the name anymore. Well, I got a phone, and it took them like a long time to send it to me. But every component in that phone is built in the United States. Every single component of the phone. And it was slightly more expensive than an iPhone. But with an iPhone, you get subsidized, fake subsidized by your phone company that says, oh, we're only going to charge you $50 a month for 24 months, which is $200 more than you would have paid if you paid cash for the thing. But every component was made in the United States. So if there is a supply chain issue, these are all made in the United States. So I get the supplies. I got in trouble at a military class I was going to for a computer. Now, this is off-the-shelf computer, but it was used for classified things, right? And it was a Japanese-made computer for the U.S. Army. And I says, hold on a second. Why are you buying a Japanese computer when we have we still have computer makers Gateway in the United States? Why are you buying this Panasonic, which is Japanese? And they didn't have an answer for that. I says, if you have a supply chain issue, all of a sudden all the things that are made to work with this computer, it's this specific laptop here, we can't use. You can't guarantee that the Japanese, if we go to war with anyone, that the Japanese will back us. It might not be in their best interest. And if it's not in their best interest, then they'll stop shipping us the parts. Are we going to go to war with them over it? They went to war with us over us not, selling stuff to them. Scrap steel and oil. We said that we're not going to sell it to you anymore because we don't like what you're doing in China. So, should there be tariffs on all those electronic things? At least the
on American ones.
Yeah, that's another thing that because it's so sensitive that they're talking about artificial intelligence, robots, electronic warfare, GPS systems, everything, communication systems, everything is now based on microprocessors, not just solid state. You got to have like 4 or 5 little computer microprocessors in these things, all working something else, right? It's so sensitive that we put a limit on them. You can't sell these things that we make here overseas. What is it? That's why like the Sony PlayStation, some of those, again, what is that driven? Who's driving it? The Department of Defense or consumers?
Consumers.
Consumers drove the increase in graphic processing possibility, the increase of the processors, how fast they worked and everything, how they're packed in, miniaturized and everything. And they got these virtual reality games where everything looks real, artificial intelligence, you can't really tell whether it's a live person or it's a computer-generated person now, because they're up to 8K. We used to have like a television, your average television, right, had 400 lines of resolution. Right? They call it like 320p now, right? That's your average television when we grew up, right? And then you had beta television. Then you have the monitors. And now it's like 8,000 lines of resolution, and your eye can only spot so much difference, So you can't tell what's live or not. If the computer could do that, the other things they're capable of doing. So I think some guy got arrested because he was selling a bunch of these to the Chinese, a bunch of like Sony's PlayStations. And they're like, you can't do that because the processor's on them. It wasn't one or two. It was like thousands of them. And, the Chinese aren't going to they're not going to give that out to little kids to play. They're going to take those processors and use them for other applications, most likely military. The other thing that flipped my wig, all right? No, I got off on a tangent, all right? So I got in trouble for bringing that up, because the people that were teaching the class were guys that had spent their basic 3 years in the Army, came out with a clearance, didn't have any life experience or anything, but got a job as a contractor to teach these classes to the Army, and they're only teaching over a written script that they have. But they're supposed to be the instructors, but they didn't have answers. That was a problem I had a lot with the Army. Right? Now, the military, when we tell them we want this communication equipment, this high-speed, sensitive communication equipment that's encrypted and has got frequency hop and it's got all the fancy stuff, can't be hacked, they can't intercept our stuff, and we order this stuff, and the guy making it, because the Army put out, this is what we want. These are the capabilities that we want. And then there's a bidding process, and some company gives us all the capabilities we want, and then they go and buy Chinese components. And no one ever checks to see if there's back doors in these components that are put together. Like Wi-Fi. If you want something with Wi-Fi, or you want something with infrared, or some of that technology, whether the Chinese haven't put a back door in there that if we went to war with China, they can access that through the back door that they have and disable all of our equipment.
Well, Mike, they wouldn't do that because we teach secular humanism and say no one would do that. Why would you even think that they would do that? You know what I'm saying?
But here's the funny thing, right? Here's this is what makes me laugh, right? When we come back, I'll give you more of it. But the fact that this makes it past the planning stage, that no one is there raising their hand and saying, "Hey, this is a problem." No one takes the first thing that's delivered, looks at it, takes it apart, and says, "No, you replace that component there, replace that one there," because it becomes. Yeah, we got kind of off topic, but I like the topic we're on because I got a lot to say about it.
Good.
And a shout out to my cousin Janine. I'm glad she likes my books, but she's had eyesight issues, so I really should. I really need to sit down and do my audiobooks. And I could get the audiobooks. I think I could sell a lot more. But at least she listens to the radio show now and then. And then she tells my mother, and my mother respects her because that's her older cousin. So my mother can't make fun of my radio show now. All right, we'll be back for the last quarter of the show.
Political party poopers got you down?
Shake it off and join me, Dennis Sonar Green, every weekday from 4 to 6 p.m. on WRMN for A Political Talk Show, where we cut through the doom and gloom with a focus on America first, constitutional values, and a populist perspective that puts you, the citizen, at the center of the conversation. At WRMN, the talk of the town, we're not afraid to challenge the status quo and bring you the straight talk you need. Whether you're frustrated with the political establishment or looking for a clear, some nonsense analysis, this show has you covered. Tune in. Let's take on the issues together with a fresh, unfiltered approach. Catch us every weekday from 4 to 6 p.m. on WRMN, A Political Talk Show. WRMN, the talk of the town.
Get ready for Around the House every Saturday night from 5 to 7 p.m. on WRMN AM 1410. If you're a homeowner or contractor looking to tackle those projects that feel a bit too big, this is the show for you. Join Eric along with his knowledgeable guests as they dive deep into everything from DIY renovations to creating a healthy home environment. We'll provide you with the tools and tips you need to complete your projects with confidence and ease. But it's not all work and no play. We believe in having fun. Our passion for home improvement shines through as we help you save time, money, and reduce the stress of DIY. So whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, don't miss Around the House. Tune in every Saturday night and let's tackle those home projects together.
We asked parents who adopted teens to share their journey.
If you build a relationship, then it becomes easier. If you build trust, it becomes easier. As a parent, you want what's best for your child. To give them the love that a child needs is probably the best thing you can do for a teenager.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. Visit adoptuskids.org to learn more. A message brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
This is the story of the one. As a lineman, he does whatever it takes to keep the power on in his community. And he wants a partner like Grainger who does the same. Grainger offers the professional-grade products he needs, from voltage detectors to harnesses to hard hats, plus fast, dependable delivery, so he can rise to every challenge. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Here on WRMN AM 1410, we like to keep you informed and in tune to what's happening here in the Fox River Valley and what's going on here on WRMN. We recognize the importance of local radio to be a part of the conversation and to be a part of the community for the community.
You know, we talked about the importance of community theater, but supporting community radio is a big deal too. And, you know, for WRMN, this is a really cool thing that you guys do every day, and a really important thing. You have to have a local media outlet to talk about what's going on in your town. So you guys do a nice job.
Tune in to AM 1410, WRMN. Don't forget, you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/WRMN Radio. Keep in tune and informed on what's happening here in the Fox River Valley, right here on WRMN.
Fix Bayonets, comrades, we're back for the last quarter of our Veterans Radio Shout-Out Show about all things military, national defense, law enforcement, and otherwise. And today we're mixing in law enforcement, national defense, and otherwise. But I want to give a couple shout-outs. First, we got the America's First Responders Fest, which is coming up on September 20th. And it's going to be 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., rain or shine, downtown Hampshire. So Hampshire, Illinois community event. They're going to have a car show there. You know, there'll be food trucks and everything, all sorts of stuff going on. And I will be doing my radio show live from there. And the other shout out is for my Post 104 American Legion. We have our movie night tonight, so the doors open at 5 o'clock, and we're showing Angel and the Bad Man. It's a John Wayne movie. It is in the public domain, but this is you get to see it on the big screen. It's a pretty big screen over there at the community center, and we got good sound. And bring your own snacks and drinks. It's a good time. Yep, the entry donation is $5, but that not only goes for the movie, it goes for our progressive 50-50 too. So if you come in to see the movie, you get to see the movie, and you get a chance at our progressive 50-50. All right, so
John Wayne and Jane Russell, you can't beat that.
Gail Russell, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, she's smoking hot, man.
Yeah. Dennis says that China sends stuff via the ocean cheap, and Zagobla says that he's pretty sure that the recruiting command is in Fort Knox now.
Yeah, probably. That's where HRC is, so that would just make sense. All right, so I was going to talk about a certain incident. I'm not going to talk about that because second thought of it shouldn't be talked about. All right, and not in this, what do I call it? Not in this forum. All right, but one of the things is, with all the smart thinkers, there's a great movie out there about how they built the Bradley fighting vehicle, which in its original development stage looks nothing like the current Bradley fighting vehicle. All right, and they wanted to get this developed because the M113 was basically an aluminum oven. All right, it had a little inch or more of aluminum armor. It'll stop a rifle round, but it's not going to stop a 50 cal or a Dishka, a 12.5 millimeter Dishka or the 14 millimeter one. All right, so what I'm getting at is that no one checks the components out, what they're building them with, whether they're using cheap steel or whatever. And the other thing is the electronic components. And because when the companies make these things, because they're so sensitive and classified, they say, this needs to be proprietary because our competitors will get our plans. And if their competitors get the plans and we lose money, so we put all this research and development into it, so this is proprietary stuff. In some cases, it's just because they're using stuff that you don't want them to use. That's just that, and I think there should be a better oversight on that as we go through. Because
the M113 I thought was made by FMC, which is a chemical company. So they went outside of their box to create that. And my favorite version of that one was the one that had the mortar inside.
Yep.
It was a traveling mortar. I mean, I built that model. That was kind of cool.
It was just from Vietnam War on, right? Earlier before Vietnam War.
I had a friend. He's gone on to bigger and better things though. He worked with me at the state's attorney's office, and he was a tank commander during Desert Storm, the first one. And his job was to go out in the Bradley and draw fire, and then the Abrams would take care of whoever was shooting at him if he was good enough to get away from the first shots or whatever. But they were still using them in at least the first Gulf War that I know of.
Still using them now.
Yeah, they were scout vehicles mostly.
Well, you needed a vehicle to keep up with the armor. Armor is useless without infantry support. So that's why they developed the Bradley, right? But Bradley got kind of overdeveloped. All right. Then you had the Stryker vehicle, which was like, but, all right, so as they went over to the Bradley, they started hand me down in the 113s to everyone else, to all the support units. So the support units to keep up with the infantry somewhat, and the infantry would have better fire support, better base of fire, and better protection with the Bradley than they had with the 113. Like I said, aluminum melts at really low temperatures, apparently. It's not a pretty...
It also is a real good conductor of electricity because trailers and stuff used to use aluminum wiring. So yeah, it's light and it conducts electricity. All right.
All right, so I'm going to come a little full circle on this, even for last week, with our force protection to protect our interest to keep crime from weakening us. Not just crime, but the chemical biological agents known as narco trafficking. All right, cocaine, fentanyl, heroin, in some ways marijuana, right? But other drugs out there, Oxycontin, things that could be mass produced because they're synthetic, all right? And people are shipping them in nefariously to the United States, knowing that we have a large population with disposable income that can get addicted to this, run out of disposable income, resort to crime, right? Because now they're addicted to it, and addiction is a terrible thing, right? And it weakens our country, right? So we want to make it cost prohibitive. Right? So we want to close up the border so that we only have to patrol the limited areas, so that they might get 1 or 2 kilos in, but for every kilo they get in, we're going to take 100 kilos. We're going to destroy 100 kilos. It starts making it cost prohibitive for them. And, if you need $1,000 to get a fix, a dime bag becomes now a $1,000 bag, right? You just can't mug an old lady, for $1,000. So it limits.
No, you got to do check washing, and you got to do high-end burglaries, and you got to change your mode of operation.
And there's more competition with high-end burglars, and usually those guys aren't addicts.
Right, and also they got some little guys behind them that do their cleanup work for them too when there's a competitor in the area.
Yeah. So shutting down the border, Mexico there, and is it possible, if that border doesn't get shut down and the narco terrorists, the cartels with narco terrorists, right? Because they're using terrorism in the form of chemical and biological warfare to weaken our country and weaken our people. And if they're forcing their way through our border, that's an invasion. Now, if they're going back over the border and say, oh, no, I'm in Mexico, you're not at war with Mexico, there's precedence for that. We've already done it with Pancho Villa. So can we go in and stomp them? Likely.
Absolutely.
We could. Would Mexico be able to do anything about it?
Not a whole lot.
Not a whole lot. Next problem, right? Canada. We don't build a wall, or between us and Canada. There's no wall. There's hardly any fence up north, right? There's only there's a lot of wilderness up there, but Canada's border was wide open, and guess what? They're not squeaky clean. There's a lot of fentanyl coming in through Canada. They're not stopping the Chinese from bringing it in through Canada, and then it comes into the United States. Because as long as it doesn't stay in Canada, they don't seem to care. So if it's not affecting them, why should they put any money in it to protect us? Right? They know it. They know they're a way station for it, but they don't put any law enforcement in there. They don't put any blocks. They don't make it cost prohibitive for that to happen. So what did we do? We threw a tariff on them. We says, if you're going to keep that border wide open, if you're not going to fight the narco trafficking, if you're going to allow this stuff to flow into our country unabated, we're going to tariff you. And so they go, oh, rather than close up their border and do something about it, right? And then we pull the tariffs off. And we said, thanks. That's just being a good neighbor. Thank you so much, right? They put a counter tariff on us, right? A retaliatory tariff. And what did they just do? They dropped their retaliatory tariffs because they were making things so expensive for their own people, because they don't have the diverse economy that the United States has. So they lost that war right away. They didn't even have to be at that in that economic war. They just had
You
to.
know, there's a guy. You know, I have another YouTube channel which I just hit 58,000 views recently, and it's mostly about trains and models, but it's like nature. And I also have a lot of guys that follow me that are involved in trains.
Paul,
But there's a guy I've been
what's
watching.
the name of your YouTube channel?
It's actually Paul Burvid 1610. Okay, but in fact, I've got a video up now of the Leaning Tower of Niles, which has got almost 1,000 views from last week. But it's mostly trains. It's mostly trains and GI Joe type stuff. But yeah, that's it. Thanks. But there's a guy up in Canada, and he's outside of Toronto, I believe, and he fixes radios, and that's how I kind of got to watch. He, like you mentioned earlier in the broadcast about the tubes, he does the tubes, and you know he shows you, and there's really only a couple of different kind of tubes, you know, but he started going on these rants about Trump and the tariffs, you know, and you know I you know, again, we're not political or anything like that, but I got, you know, they're saying some terrible things about the U.S. up there, you know, and a lot of. Now, there's other guys I follow. There's Glenn and Friends. He cooks, but he's also got an aviation channel. I watch him. He's really good. And what they do is now they criticize us, you know, about this stuff. But I pointed out to the guy, you know, that twice, if it wasn't for the United States, they would have been in trouble. You know, first with the Germans and second with Hitler, you know. And a lot of people forget that during the Lend-Lease, there were airports that bordered both the US and Canada. And Curtiss Manufacturing would make planes, and then they would fly them to like bases, either in airports, either in Minnesota or North Dakota or Michigan or whatever, and they would land them, and then they would push the plane to the line where the border was, and then the Canadians would get in it, and then they would fly it either to Toronto or Newfoundland, and then from there to England. Okay, and they forget that we helped them twice. Okay, and you know, I mean, you can you know, and again, I don't ever recall the United States invading Canada like they did in 1812.
1812, yeah.
1812, they came and got us. Okay, yeah. And you know, so you know, they could say all they want. Okay, but you know, the United States has been their good neighbor for forever. Okay. And I know, you know, we do NORAD together, and, you know, we were shooting down the balloons, and we track Santa Claus at Christmas time and all that stuff. But I mean, they should now I will say this, because I'm a member of these model channels too. We did do them wrong when we forced their Avro to get rid of the F-106. Okay. I mean, I guess it was the F-106 or whatever. We did them really wrong, because that was a fantastic airplane. But most of their aeronautical engineers then came to the U.S. and they worked on the space program. And you know, but they should remember that we were there for them at all times. And you know, they, you know, and you know, there were a lot of, you know, they put a lot of restrictions on us. The Chrysler had to have plants in Winnipeg, because the cars had to be made 51% in their country, or they wouldn't sell them and things. You know, I don't see any homegrown Canadian car manufacturers, if you get my drift. You know, I mean, they do, but you know, they do have a kind of a aerospace industry with Bombardier and a few other things like that, but I don't recall a whole lot coming out of that country other than maple syrup, you know. And I know they have resources and stuff like that, but you know, as I found out from one of these shows, we could raise maple syrup here. You got a maple tree, drill a hole in it. The sap comes out.
If you go down I-55, just south of Bloomington, at one of the rest stops there, it's dedicated to a grove that does maple syrup there.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have to get it from them. You know, we can get it from ourselves. Yeah, I've got a couple of maple trees myself. So,
But
you know, and
what do we get 70% of from them?
Liquor?
Oil.
Oil.
That's why the pipeline was being built, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that we don't have our own oil, but Canadian oil was so much cheaper. And then, and then certain rail barons are ensuring that we only use rail cars to transport oil instead of a pipeline.
Yeah.
You know, because then they make the money on it, which makes the oil more expensive.
They're also moving in on our rail traffic too, especially in the Chicago area. It's actually up by you guys. The big, I think, intermodal thing from them is the CN, the Canadian National. It's coming in around that area. In fact, they had a traverse O'Hare, I think, and then they're actually down to Joliet. I think the big yard down there, the EJ&G yard now, I think, is a Canadian National yard.
Yep. Which the thing is, right, that we used, rather than use military power against the Canadians, right, we used our economic power versus tariffs to get them to comply, and I don't think they still have complied with our law enforcement needs. Now, I'll tell you what, if you're a convicted felon, try to cross the border to Canada. Right? Go to the Canadian border. They run your name. They have access to our systems. You throw it, it throws up an FBI number or a SID number, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, you're a convicted felon, and they lock you up for trying to enter Canada illegally. But if you just come off a boat somewhere on the shore, you know, it's like, oh, who cares? But try to drive across. Try to drive across if you've had a DUI. They won't let you in, and they'll grab you for trying to enter Canada illegally because it's against the law for them. So they have their, what we would consider outrageous views, right? And it's our northern. Here's the nice thing about it. Since 1814, all right? Since 1814, we haven't had to worry about military invasion through our northern border. They just weren't going to do it. They're a buffer state. Let's say the Russians came across and went through Alaska, and at least they'd have to make it through the Yukon and Canada, giving us time to react. Or if they came across the Arctic and came down, right? Or if the Chinese, which is really weird because the Chinese are training on Canadian soil. That's friendly, right? That's friendly toss.
No, not at all.
Take your nice competitor, and have them train on our soil. It would be like us funding a civil war between Quebec and Canada, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of get all the way around. Anyways, the best way to fight unfairness and meanness coming out of Canada against the United States, including a lot of their comedians, the best way to fight that is during the summertime when the weather's nice, don't go up there to fish or hunt when hunting season's up. Stop all of your tourism there. Don't go there.
They stop coming to Vegas, and they stop coming to a lot of places. So yeah, we shouldn't be reciprocating by going up there. There's plenty of nice places to fish in Minnesota and Michigan and the Dakotas and in Seattle area, and we should be fishing our own lands and hunting our own animals than going up there.
Yeah, don't spend your U.S. dollar there.
Right.
And that's when you talk about tariffs and everything, the ultimate weapon we have is our economy. The fact that our people have the highest standard of living, have the highest amount of disposable income. We're the biggest consumers on the planet. We're the number one consumer country on the planet of non-necessary goods, right? China and India, biggest consumers on the planet of food, right? Necessary goods, food and energy, keep them alive. When you're talking about iPhones and everything else, it's the United States. So everyone wants to do business here. If they can't do business here, it's more difficult for them to sell their products because everyone else is living hand to mouth. So if we put a limit on them and saying, we don't like your policies towards us, we don't like your overall policies, so we're not going to do business with you or allow you to do business, and we're not going to do any business with anyone that does business with you. That's basic psyops there. Basic psyops. If you got a guy at the top and he's stubborn and you can't change his mind about everything, he's set in his ways, all right, there's always someone that influences him, or there's always something that's going to influence him that you can't do. You find those people and you target them. You change their beliefs and their values so that they change his beliefs and values, his or her beliefs and values. And that's what we're doing with India, all right? India buys the Russian oil, and then they sell it with a slight markup to everyone else because everyone still wants the Russian oil. But they say, oh, well, this isn't Russian oil, this is Indian oil, but it's oil. So now we're going to throw tariffs on India because they think they're being slick, and they think they found a loophole. So next week, let's have Marla on, okay, Paul?
We will.
Have Marla pick a topic.
Okay, I will.
All right. This has been great because she's a highly decorated educator.
She is.
Yeah.
And she's a friend of ours, and she's also a co-host.
And people like her.
They do.
Yep.
Thank you.
there she is. Yep, co-host. And you see, the wrestling show was real good.
Was it?
It didn't have a large turnout. I say because the wrestlers, they're not doing their part in pushing it through everything. But if you check out the YouTube channel for Ultimate Combat Gauntlet YouTube channel, Lucia hired a guy. That's his profession to do this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and he put together this channel. So like all these fights are on there. I mean, it's one thing to see it on TV, but if you watch these things live, I mean, you're right up on the ring. You're right in the action. You know? So, all right. Peace out.
Next week.
See you next
Have
week.
A good week, everyone.
Same station. All right, bye.
Bye-bye.